This one's Taking the Myth. I am one of your hosts, Iram Ramzan, and joining me is Stefan Knight. Stefan, how are you?
I'm very well. Beautiful. First effort on the intro there. Done. So where are you off to again?
Right. So I am doing a little bit of travelling for the next month or so, but I am starting off in the land of the rising sun.
I am well jealous.
Yes, I am going to Japan.
I am really jealous. Japan's on my bucket list before I die. There's something aesthetically unique about the culture there, I think, that might be a photographer's dream. That's how I see it.
So I was looking for somewhere to go, and to be honest with you, Japan wasn't really on the top of my list.
Racist.
That is definitely a factor, but I don't know. It's not that I thought, I'll never go. I think it's just one of those. It wasn't number one on my list, right? But I don't know. I just thought I'll go somewhere where, because I've got a bit of time and money, I'll go somewhere where I can just go for maybe like 2 weeks, and then because I don't have a full-time job to get back to, I can sort of take my time, really.
I can totally see you in a kimono with a samurai sword, hunting down somebody in the name of bloody revenge in black and white. I can totally see that.
Yeah, I will definitely be posing with a kimono, so watch out for that photograph. No accusations of cultural appropriation, by the way.
Well, full travel report when you return, because I'll have a million questions. Also, you were on a panel very recently. How did that go? What was that about? Where can people find it?
So, I took part in a panel. It was organised by the Equiano Project. But yeah, basically it was about the future of Islam in the West. And I was the only lady, minus the moderator, amongst 3 men. And it was a pretty good discussion. It was with the Islamic scholar Abdul Hakim Murad, or Tim Winters, the Turkish writer Mustafa Akyol, and Kenan Malik, who is a columnist of The Observer. It was, I think that the majority of the crowd was Muslim, which is, it makes for a change, really, because normally these events, you do get a mix in the audience, but usually there's very few Muslim in the audience. But this one, it seemed to be like the majority were Muslim here.
Any fireworks? Angry questions from the audience?
Surprisingly, no. I was expecting some rabble rousers. I was expecting someone to like scream and shout about something, or call us traitors. But I think there was one point that I wanted to make that we didn't get quite around to, and which I wish I'd made, was about the level of discourse within Muslim communities. And my issue is, we, if I can use a collective, but I know there are, I don't like the phrase Muslim community, because, we're not homogenous. There are many different communities. But anyway, I think as a collective, I think we've really failed to challenge the sort of bigotry and extremism from within our own communities. And I think the problem is that because maybe people see themselves as under attack, that the instinct is to be a bit more defensive. And so that's why whenever something happens in the name of Islam, the usual platitudes get thrown out, hashtag not all Muslims, or this isn't real Islam, not all Muslims, etc., etc. And the problem is, because we keep seeing all these atrocities being carried out by Muslim extremists or in the name of Islam, I think just, that those phrases just ring hollow now. Nobody has the patience for that anymore. And what we've seen now is, this debate now is mostly being had by people who are maybe on the right, predominantly on the right, tend to be a bit more anti-immigration and now slightly more hostile towards Muslims. And people like that don't really care about the nuances within the communities. I think they've just lost patience with, yes, we know not all Muslims. Yes, we know Muslims are diverse, etc. But, you know, why does this keep happening again and again? Why does no one challenge, you know, these people who are constantly shouting and claiming to speak on behalf of Muslims? Yeah, so I think it's just no longer good enough to say, oh, well, why should we be expected to condemn X, Y, and Z when these problems exist within other communities? I just don't think we have that luxury anymore, especially now that the discourse has just become so, I think, polarizing. I hope that makes sense.
That would have been a great point to make on the panel. But I will watch it. I will watch it. And anyone else who wants to watch it, I will stick a link to that in the show notes. So, you know, if it's on YouTube, put some love in the comments for Iram. I just want to, because I think you mentioned Ken and Malik there, and that just reminded me of Douglas Murray, because I don't know if you saw, he was on the world's largest podcast the other week. He was on the Joe Rogan Experience. I very rarely check in with the Joe Rogan Experience nowadays, unless there's somebody on there who I'm particularly fond of. I have noticed like a high quotient of like cranks and conspiracists and, you know, self-professed experts on things. And I mean, 2 points here. I think we might have mentioned a little while back about Douglas Murray. Maybe we suspected sometimes he was a bit more lenient on dodgy characters if he were in favour of their politics versus ones that he wasn't. You know, I felt, you know, he chummed up to people like Elon Musk, and I thought if you'd think that if somebody of the left was doing the similar things Elon Musk was doing, you know, Douglas would have very short patience for it. But then I was very surprised to see Douglas Murray also criticise Trump's comments on Ukraine. Even though he's obviously been friendly with the president of the United States recently, which is crazy. I think Donald Trump actually put out a promotion of Douglas Murray's new book, which is just really, that's incredible to think of. But what I'm trying to get to is, on this podcast with Joe Rogan, there was another chap on there, a comedian called Dave Smith. I don't really know anything about Dave Smith and his comedy or his career, but he of late has turned his entire attention to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and he's invited on to speak ad nauseum on the Joe Rogan show on his own. When they have someone like Douglas Murray on, Dave Smith was invited on as well, I think, to kind of counteract Douglas Murray or engage in some sort of discourse and debate. It didn't go well, and I was very surprised to see Douglas Murray within the first minute of this podcast kind of go on the offensive in a very polite, civil British way, go on the offensive against Joe Rogan for having people on there who were not experts, people who spoke from authority but really didn't have a grasp of what was going on. And it sort of ignited this debate again about what is an expert in the digital age, where we all potentially have access to an audience. We can all have a platform and be, you know, profess to be a credible source on something. We all do it in our own ways. Douglas Murray's point was Dave Smith's never stepped foot in the Middle East. He's never been to Israel, yet he's speaking with authority about things he has no understanding of. And I think a lot of people kind of interpreted that as an appeal to authority, you know, maybe an ad hominem attack. You know, you've never been there, what do you know? How do you kind of balance this idea of the expert versus, you know, the average commentator in your mind?
So this is a really interesting one. I think people are entitled to their views, first of all. I don't know much about this comedian and how strongly he criticizes Israel. I don't even know if he calls himself an expert. I think that's the point of maybe Joe Rogan's podcast, that, you know, anyone can go on there and just have a platform, really.
Yeah.
I don't know if he... but because the thing is, he has interviewed certain like Nazi sympathizing figures on there and conspiracy theorists. And my initial thought was, well, why did it take Douglas Murray to actually call this out? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and you might know better, but has anyone actually called out Joe Rogan's guests like this before? It's because it seems like before, I mean, maybe there might have been the odd criticism, but it just seems like maybe no one really said anything until Douglas made that point, and then everyone started saying, yes, he was right to call out the woke right, or whatever the phrase they were using. And to my knowledge, I've not seen as much criticism of Joe Rogan until now. And secondly, just on who is an expert, well, the thing is, I mean, Douglas also writes about Iran and, Iranian politics, but as far as I'm aware, he's never been to Iran. I don't think you necessarily have had to visit a place to be an expert, because otherwise, 95% of people out there would be out of a job, basically. I mean, I have my other issues with Douglas as well. I mean, his latest book, I've not read it all myself, but I've read a few.
I've read it.
I've read some extracts, and I think, there are some bits that are really simplistic, and, it's just some of it in there that I don't agree with either. But anyway, so yeah, let me know what you think about the whole Joe Rogan thing. I mean, has he been called out before? I mean, we're lucky that we only have like 5 people who listen to us, so well, we can call out experts and no one would care.
It's the difficult one, because obviously as people that create content and kind of demand the right to talk about whatever we want, write about whatever we want, I think that's fine, and I think that's not necessarily what Douglas Murray's going for there. I mean, as far as I'm aware, no one's called out Joe Rogan like this on his show to his face. I've heard Sam Harris be very critical about him for his guest choices, and Sam Harris would have considered himself a friend. I think what we've got with Joe Rogan is he's very good at what he does. Obviously, he's the world's biggest podcast. He's got that sit around, have a conversation vibe. It makes everyone kind of feel like they're in on it.
Smoke a cigar.
Yeah, it's very informal. But the thing is, he's gone from a guy who was kind of having celebrities on and fighters and kooks who believed in UFOs and people on there to talk about the lost city of Atlantis and all this crazy kooky stuff you'd roll a joint to and watch at college kind of mentality. And then you have kind of like the global pandemic, and all of a sudden he's got people on there pushing anti-vax nonsense and lies about ivermectin being an effective treatment and cure for COVID, which in a long roundabout way end up getting people killed. So I think if I was the most popular podcast in the world, that can rival the most popular American news channels in terms of viewership, I'd have a bit more due diligence about the people and topics I had conversations about. It's not to say Joe Rogan's a bad person. It's just that, it seems to be skewing a certain way. And I think Douglas Murray admits this himself. He's changed a little bit since October the 7th. I think that was some line for him in terms of tolerating fools. There's a different vibe to him than before, I believe. So I think that's a line for him now. I think Israel is the point for him where he will suffer no idiots, no lies, no smears.
I think you're right about Joe Rogan's platform. I think if you do have, millions worldwide listening to you, you do have a duty to be a bit more responsible as well. I mean, we can say whatever we like because no one's listening to us.
Nobody's listening. No one's going to listen. We have no authority whatsoever. I mean, that was interesting. I think it's knocked Joe Rogan for 6 a little bit because he's been taking little digs at Douglas Murray now on other episodes and kind of straw manning his opinion. So it was just interesting to see Douglas Murray do something which could potentially burn bridges with the biggest podcast and platform on the planet.
That's not going to make a difference to him, though. Really, I mean, the president of the United States has just endorsed his book, so who gives a crap about Joe Rogan right now?
Well, should we pivot to some good news in old Blighty?
Oh, yes.
Don't know if you noticed, and I'm glad this has happened because everyone was confused and no one really knew. So it's good to get some clarity. But it turns out that a woman is a adult human female from a biological point of view. And men who say they are women or have a piece of paper that says they are women are still not women. And I don't know about you, but this came as a massive shock. This was news I wasn't expecting. It's just completely blown my world wide open to learn that a woman is a woman and not a man who says they're a woman. Your thoughts on the UK Supreme Court ruling that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex? It's amazing we had to have this clarified in the legal system. What's your view on it all?
Yeah, the fact
as a real
needed,
woman.
not a pretend woman. I mean, it's just amazing, as you said, that it took the Supreme Court to clamp down on this nonsense that has been going on for well over a decade, a decade in which every civil society group turned its back on women, women losing jobs and livelihoods. They were being vilified. They were being ostracized in many cases. In some cases, they risked violence as well, all for insisting on something that is a basic biological truth. And
I mean,
it's
just to make
astounding.
a very quick point, it's worth pointing out as well, the law hasn't been changed. They haven't won a victory to change the law. They've got the Supreme Court to clarify what the law's always meant, because it is the gender ideologues and the trans rights activists who have pretended and told us and changed policy and the way society is organised around a lie that the legal definition of woman includes men with bits of paper or in a dress.
I mean, it's basically it's a clampdown on what has been collective madness. Here and abroad, when lesbians could have penises and rapists were allowed to be put in women's prisons, and a man with a beard could call himself a woman and walk into a changing room, and if you pointed out this fact, then you were the bigot. You were hurting this man's feelings. And it's just astonishing that that man's feelings were given more priority over women's safeties. And the truth, I think that's the most important thing, that it's like we were all having to buy into this collective lie and delusion. And I think history will judge the people who took the wrong stance on this. I think, have been very consistent on this when we've seen, let's say news articles of a mugshot, or illustrated with a mugshot of a stubbly man, and the headline, it says that woman jailed for voyeurism or flashing her penis or something ridiculous like that. Now we'll have no more of that. And I think, I've seen some, I don't know about you, but I've seen a few sort of, hyperbolic responses to this. And, one woman I know was saying, I'm
Wait
so
a second,
concerned.
real woman.
This is a real woman,
Okay, just checking.
A real woman.
I feel like I can say that. A legal woman. You can say that now, and the law backs you up. It's great.
Mind you, I haven't actually checked if she's all woman, but I'm just going to assume.
It's always a mystery, isn't it? It's always a mystery unless she announces her pronouns. We have no idea.
But basically, she took to her social media to express concerns and how, this is all basically kind of the media's fault on this as well, leading a witch hunt, and trans people are really going to suffer, and at the end of the day we should all be allies. And I think, sorry, what cloud cuckoo land do you live in? This was never about women versus like genuine trans people who are a tiny minority. And we're talking about the tiny minority who have, let's say the people who have had an actual full-on sex operation and they live as women and generally just want to get about their life without being harassed. I don't think many people would have an issue with that. The problem that we had was, men who had a fetish for dressing up as women and trying to dictate to women how they should and shouldn't feel around them. And we saw plenty of cases where there were debates on these issues, and I think you went to a couple of those where we had masked activists and protesters outside buildings who were just shouting obscenities. And
I have seen I have seen things you people wouldn't believe. Right, so I have been up and down the country. I've been to Scotland, I've been to London, I think Liverpool, I was Manchester covering these events numerous times, right in the thick of it. The women coming out of court for the group Women for Women Scotland are like a who's who of people I've seen at these events. Now, this isn't a criticism, this isn't me being derogatory. These are mostly middle-aged women, a lot of them, I would say, left-leaning, who would just like the right not to have a man in their bathrooms, prisons, sports. It's mostly about prisons and single-sex spaces for these guys, and I think they're perfectly reasonable, and they always made sense. However, when I'd try and cover one of their events, when I'd get on a train and take my camera or I'd sit and listen to what they'd have to say, like you say, masked activists, screaming, shouting, trying to intimidate, trying to do everything they could to shut down legal, which turned out to be speech, which is perfectly legal and accurate now. And I think you would have noticed that a lot of sporting bodies have now done U-turns in accordance with the law, banning biological men from women's sports. And I'm still angry about it, because I'm just thinking of all those, women who have dedicated their entire life to an athletic pursuit. These people are superhuman, and some mediocre fucking bloke has just waltzed in and taken a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. It just makes me angry, but it's just the blatant, obvious unfairness of it all that really irritates me more than anything. So I think you may have noticed as well, a lot of commentators are now getting a bit braver speaking about it, but they sat the whole thing out as it was going on and maligned anyone who spoke up. I'm not going to forget those fuckers either. So there certainly needs to be some sort of compensation, some sort of reconciliation with women who missed out on opportunities in sport because of blokes, women who were fired from their jobs, hounded out of positions, threatened, harassed because they express perfectly reasonable legal views, because that's what we're talking about. And no trans rights have been removed from anyone. All that's happened is the rights of women have been reasserted, and that's a good thing. Apart from voting, I don't agree with the right to vote, but we'll get into that another.
I mean, all this nonsense over what is a woman. Well, the Taliban knows exactly who women are when they're demanding that they cover up in a burqa, when they're confining them to their homes, when they're insisting that they can't even speak in public. They know what women are, and so do the mullahs of Iran when they're enforcing their stringent hijab laws, when they're arresting women for quote-unquote improper hijab, beating them up in prisons. They certainly know what women are, and yet here in the UK and in America as well, we are under this mass delusion. And you said, I hope these women will be offered some compensation. I pretty much doubt it.
Yeah.
I very much doubt it. We've had this mess, and as usual, women will clear that up, as we always do, because that's what women do. And we women won't get any apologies for this, even if they are deserved, because that's just what women do. We just deal with it.
Well done to all the Scottish organisations and activists and people that supported him along the way. This is an incredible thing, and such an unnecessary thing for them to have should have been an unnecessary thing for them to do as well. I think J.K. Rowling helped a lot in terms of funding and things like that. She's been really impressive with this. I mean, I know that she's a multi-millionaire who's got what they describe as fuck you money. The stakes are lower for her, because who's going to fire her, but it's still not pleasant, is it, to see your name absolutely dragged through the mud. The threats she gets, the accusations, the defamatory, and she's just kind of taken it in a stride, with class and dignity. And I just think I don't think people realise just what a difference she's made to this fight and to women, because even when I started covering these protests and events years ago, people would mention J.K. Rowling as one of their inspirations for finally speaking up. It's like she kind of give a whole load of people permission. You know, if one of the biggest selling authors on the planet, one of the most successful women in the UK with such a platform can, you know, defend single-sex spaces, then, you know, it kind of gives you a bit of confidence, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, well done to J.K. Rowling, and well done to all those women who campaigned on this and never gave up, even, you know, at such great personal expense.
I nearly wrote something on this the other day, actually, but I'm too fucking lazy, so I didn't. But I was going to write about the failure of satire in all of this, with special reference to Have I Got News for You?
Oh,
because I've not
seen that in ages, to be honest with you.
Well, me neither, but I mean, my point is, you know, political satire is such a great tool, you know, of irony for poking fun at the absurd and the nonsensical and the authoritarian, and all these points, you know, the authoritarian, the absurdity, the, you know, anti-scientific claims, the pressure on regular people. It's all there in the gender cult, in trans ideology, but they never went for these, you know, purple-haired ghouls who push this on society. They always went for the perceived overreach in the response, you know. And now this ruling's happened, they kind of started talking a bit more honestly about it on Have I Got News for You the other day. But if your job is political satire and you can't deconstruct something this absurd that's had a boot on the head of so many people for so long, what is your purpose?
Well, don't forget, it's on the BBC as well, isn't it? You know, they're probably too fucking scared to say anything resembling fact, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and they probably have to balance it out, you know. I mean, they did a lot of this with the reporting on the Supreme Court, inviting on a lot of men who say they are women.
Oh, dear God.
And I wonder as well, because I don't know if you remember a while back, Spectator got censored by is it Ipso?
Mm-hmm.
For referring to a trans-identified male as a man who claims to be a woman, and they got in trouble for that.
I remember that.
You know, that to be in any other sphere of the planet, that would be neutral language. The fact that you have to refer to them as a woman is the bias. So.
The fact that they said a man who identifies as a woman.
No, it was claims to be a woman. I think that's what.
Man who claims to be a woman, which is fact. This is a man who claims to be a woman because the evidence shows that he is not.
I don't know if a lot of these bodies now that have had control over the tongues of media outlets will have to ease up on some of this nonsense about preferred pronouns and things like that. I mean, you know, as you remember, the BBC got caught changing direct quotes from people, rape victims, because they misgendered their attacker. They referred to their attacker as he in a direct quote, and the BBC edited it to she because they was trans identified.
It's like, can you imagine like how that rape victim must be feeling? She's reading a news story talking about her, you know, horrific ordeal, and then she finds that the editorial board has changed he to she because, you know, some fucking rapist pervert has decided to identify as a woman now to probably avoid getting a harsher sentence or to be put in a woman's prison. I mean, how could anybody not see that this was just a ploy? I mean, the fact that, suddenly now you identify as trans because you're up in court. Oh, how convenient.
Yeah, it must not offend or hurt the feelings of the male rapist. I mean, it got worse than that. Somebody got told off in court for misgendering their rapist.
Are men's egos that fucking fragile? Actually, yeah, they are.
I mean, it's not
this
even
is all to do with men's egos. I'm sorry, but I think a lot of the world's problems could be summed up with just that sentence. Men's egos being hurt. I mean, look at all these wars that we have going on and these conflicts, and it's basically just a big pissing contest between two men.
I mean, it's not even like it was if it was kind of like an unspoken rule or a bit of politeness, this is the thing. If we were left to sort this out by ourselves, we might be careful about how we refer to people. Like, if you was to meet a morbidly, disgustingly obese person, you wouldn't walk up to them and go, "You fat cunt," and then start giving them shit about it. You know, I would say that'd be rude. However, if society was ordered around pretending this person was healthy and slim, it becomes a moral obligation to call them a fat cunt.
Well, actually, don't forget, was it a cover of Cosmopolitan magazine where they had an obese woman on the cover and said, "This is healthy," or something like that? And lots of, I mean, there was quite a bit of, backlash to that, because they're like, well, if she's morbidly obese, this is not healthy. I mean, if you're saying she's still beautiful, fine, that's subjective, but describing her as healthy is it's just not true.
Well, talking about the BBC and impartiality and how they sometimes, let's say, fail to meet the mark on that. Did you see, there was an article out there on the BBC News UK, and the headline was, "Eid celebration can be lonely for Muslim reverts."
So I saw that, and I mean, first of all, I think they just used her quote in the headline, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they've changed it to converts. It was written
I
by
thought they put reverts in a. I thought basically they used what the Muslim convert said as a headline, so it was quoting her.
I thought that at first, but the archive version, it's not a quote, and it's used in the main body of the article by the author of the article, Sharika Ahmed. She's called.
Yeah, I saw that. So yeah, I saw the Tory MP Tom Tugendhat's tweet about this as well, and he was talking about how this was sectarian, which I thought was an incorrect use of the word sectarian. And he said it was an Islamist term. It really annoys me when people just use Islamist for everything as well.
Yeah.
Now, basically, the term revert stems from the belief that everyone is technically born Muslim, but then it's your parents and your society that kind of change your religion. Everyone's born Muslim, right? So that's why a lot of people use the term revert, because you're reverting back to your natural state of being Muslim, mashallah, as opposed to convert. Now, I think the BBC is wrong to use the word revert, because this is all a subjective opinion at the end of the day. They should have stuck to convert, and if they had quoted her saying revert, that's different. I think some people made it out a bit bigger than it was, and describing it as sectarian is just, I think, going a bit too far. But yeah, I think revert's a nonsense word, and it's not an Islamist word, because I know plenty of Muslims who use the term revert, and they're by no means Islamists at all. It's just a word that they use because they've been taught to use it.
I understand that, and it is, I didn't see it as a push for the new
the
caliphate.
Islamization of
I just saw it as a bit of a dropping of the ball from the BBC in terms of its duty and impartiality, because it is the idea that we're all born Muslim and we revert. I'm not saying it's not an extreme or it's not an Islamist thing, but it is a dogma
truth
of Islam. Yeah, well, it is a dogma of Islam, isn't it? So by using that word, you are propping up the Islamic faith as truth, when it, you really need to be neutral. If you are the BBC, anyway. What do I want to talk about next? We got men in dresses out the way early this episode. It's kind of left me at a loss. No. The only problem I've got here is that a few things have come up recently that have involved entertainment. So like Netflix, Adolescence, Louis Theroux's documentary on the nutjob Zionists. And I've not seen any of them, and it's not been a concerted effort not to watch it. I've just not got round to it in any way.
Yeah, I watched.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, so have you watched Adolescence?
I've not watched Adolescence.
Okay, good.
Which means I can never be Prime Minister.
Well,
but I have watched The Settlers by Louis Theroux.
This is this trap I'm falling into here by having an opinion on Adolescence when having never seen it. It's almost like Dave Smith's opinion on Israel, having never been to Israel. But what I have noticed with Adolescence is the way...
But I have been to Israel.
Yeah, you have. I mean, I've noticed it's become a kind of national obsession for the last fortnight, where everyone's demanding our politicians watch it and incorporate the message into various legislation, and it's even being shown in schools and things like that.
It's a fictional fucking drama. Has everyone forgot that?
It's not Chernobyl, is it? I can imagine, if someone wants to say, you know what, we should really whack on HBO Chernobyl when we want to learn about the disaster or something about communism, that's the thing to watch, and it can be helpful. But this, as far as I can tell, again, I could be misspeaking, and I will openly admit that, so I'm just thinking out loud here, but the kind of subject of the movie, the TV show rather, is a young lad who murders a girl, and he's sort of radicalised by online content. It's kind of like the incel sort of profile. I mean, mass murdering incels in the UK, or just murdering incels in the UK that have been radicalised by online content, appears to stand at zero, to my mind. So it seems to be addressing a problem that doesn't really exist in the UK, as entertaining and as well made as I'm sure it is. I don't understand why news channels are hounding Kemi Badenoch to see whether she's watched it and are responding with incredulity when she says no. What's your take on what? It seems like a moral panic. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer would rather discuss a fictional TV drama rather than focus on actual crimes taking place, like the grooming gangs. Channel 4 did an excellent documentary last week on this. It was a 90-minute documentary, and it was very much told from the victims' point of view. So we heard from women who were abused in really horrific ways by gangs of mostly Pakistani men up and down the country, and how they were let down by multiple authorities, really. I don't know if you heard, but Tim Montgomery, there was a debate. Tim Montgomery raised this, and Labour MP kind of shut him down on this and said, "Oh, you're going to bring up that dog whistle again, blah blah blah." And
so Lucy Powell.
Yes. Lucy Powell, she's like, "Oh, here we go again. Oh, you're going to jump on that bandwagon, are you?" And it just, that to me summed up the problem within the Labour Party. Just
to clarify that point, I just brought the article up. So the Conservatives are asking for Labour's Lucy Powell to resign over grooming gang remarks. So just exactly what was said. Tim Montgomery was on BBC Radio 4, Any Questions? This is from Sky. And he said, and he started, "I don't know if any of you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs." He got that far. And Miss Powell jumped in, an MP for Manchester Central. "Oh, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay, let's get that dog whistle out." Yeah. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, Labour's... everyone's hounding Kemi Badenoch on whether she's watched
about Adolescence,
about an entirely fictional show, and meanwhile something that actually happened, an actual documentary, is mentioned in a debate, and immediately the person who brings it up is shut down for it. What does that tell you about Labour's priorities? And you know what, it's not a surprise that they had their asses whooped by reform in the local elections. It's it's like Labour just doesn't help themselves, really, do they? If she hadn't seen it, the normal response and like a very political, diplomatic response would have been, well, thank you for that question. I have to say that I've not watched the documentary yet, but I will certainly look out for it, as it's on a very, very important subject. Jess Phillips just about admitted that there had been a cover-up, but that was filled with many caveats, etc., before she admitted that in Parliament. But it just goes to show you that there's just no political will to actually do something on that particular issue. But hey, let's focus on an entirely made-up drama on Netflix. I mean, maybe Adolescence is a good drama. I've not seen it. Maybe it's all right.
I'm sure it is. Like, Stephen Graham's good. I'm sure I've heard that it was all filmed in Warners, which is always good. But I mean, they got invited to Downing Street, and it's become part of the curriculum now in some way. It's being shown in schools. And like you say, that's a great point you've made there about this, a real documentary about a real serious issue on a mainstream TV channel, by the way. This isn't some kind of YouTube Tommy Robinson hit job that's been thrown together. This is Channel 4 journalists who've put this out and, gone to time to interview victims and things like that. And it's just dismissed out of hand by a Labour MP as a dog whistle. The kind of sneering disdain Labour appears to have for ordinary working class voters and their concerns, like the mass rape of children, immigration and how them things inform each other. It's just insane. And like you say, reform's going to vacuum this up, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite... I'm actually worried about the direction in which we're heading, to be honest with you. And, I'm just thinking, should I just take the plunge and move to fucking Dubai? Because that's where everyone seems to be going now.
I'd recommend staying in Japan, but they're sort of a monoculture. If you want to see what a strict immigration policy looks like, there's no calls to diversify Japan, is there? There's no guilt in Japan. No one's looking at Japanese cinema and saying not diverse enough. I think if any illegal immigrants commit crime over there, they feed them to Godzilla. I think that's actually state policy.
Maybe I should move to Japan. I'm seriously considering maybe I should just fucking stay in Japan. I mean, from behind, I could pass off as Japanese because I have black hair.
Yes, especially with the Komodo and the sword on you. You could make that happen. Yeah, I can see that. Just a bit of clever
eyeliner. From far, I could pass off as Japanese. And you know what? I think in my past life, I probably was Japanese. I don't like noise in public.
You really think so?
Yeah, I am a stickler for rules and... maybe not conformity as such, but I don't like people making noise in public. Apparently they don't like it when you blare out music on public transport, which is a fucking endemic in this country, by the way.
Tell me about it.
Actually, when a drop kick whoever decides to play their shitty TikTok videos on the tube. Whereas I don't think you'll see that in Japan. I mean, I hope not.
No, I think
I'll just draw my samurai sword and just slice and dice.
That took a dark turn at the end. But I think I have seen rumblings of Japan getting really impatient and fed up with Western tourists over there taking the piss and doing all the annoying things that we have to put up with at home to Japan. And it's not going well for them. Not the Japanese, I mean the people they're visiting who are finding themselves in trouble or getting turned away from places. Which
I'm just going for the diverse Kit Kats, really.
What can we talk about next?
I mean, we could do...
I know fuck all about India and Pakistan. I don't know if that's worth
as an
talking
expert.
About. You know way more than me.
As an expert.
I mean, just quickly, are we staring World War III in the face? Is it going to kick off royally?
Right. I mean... So I think, let's just recap slightly.
Oh my God.
I think this all started because of, a horrific attack on Hindu tourists in April. And
I thought you was going to go back to when, independence was granted then, when you said, let's start from the beginning. I thought we was going to get a history lesson. Otherwise, I wouldn't have laughed at you starting with the slaughter of tourists. So, yeah, sorry about that.
You could just edit that out.
Yeah, I think so.
From the recent beginning then, I mean, if you're going to go right back to the beginning, let's bring the British, right? But from the more recent beginning, it was there was a terrorist attack on Hindu tourists in the Indian part of Kashmir, allegedly carried out by the Pakistani jihadi groups. And since then, there's been this, exchange of fierce words. India threatening to cut off water to Pakistan, which I'm not sure if it's even allowed to do. And in those few weeks, there were quite a few funny memes, which I don't know if you saw, but
I did.
You did, okay. And lots of quite a few Pakistani and Indian men outside the Pakistani embassy just facing off each other. And have to say, I kind of laughed because somebody on Twitter said it looks like a fight between Deliveroo and Uber Eats. Which is racially profiling.
That's racist.
It's racist, but it was kind of funny.
That's racist.
So in response, kind of delayed response, India launched airstrikes overnight, targeting 9 sites in Pakistan and the Pakistani part of Kashmir, and killing. Islamabad's claiming about 26 may have died, but I think the official is about 8 or 9 people. New Delhi's blaming Pakistan for the terrorist attack. Islamabad denies being involved. And so everyone is concerned that there's going to be some sort of major war because both of them have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And no one wants to see that happening.
We don't want to start a nuclear war unless we absolutely have to.
No. But some of the responses that I've seen online, especially from the Indian accounts, and I'm talking about verified accounts as well. And these are people who, on their Twitter bios, I saw that they were, TV presenters or something, and they were kind of salivating at the prospect of war with Pakistan, saying, "Oh, let's turn Pakistan into another Gaza." And I just think,
Jesus,
what is wrong with you? Why would you actually wish that on anybody? And
some of these Hindu some of the really Hindu fundamentalists, especially online, can give any jihadist a run for the money. Any Islamist.
Don't say that because they really don't like it when you call them like the Indian Taliban, because they get really offended. But you see it online, and you see this in the comment section of news articles. Every time there's an article about India or even Pakistan on the Times, you'll always see Indian nationalists on the comments just trying to defend India, and it's actually quite pathetic, really.
What do they call them? Hindutva. Yeah.
And these people, they're salivating over the prospect of war. You just think, it's not like a video game that you're playing in your mum's fucking basement. This is real. War is not nice. It's horrific, and you're acting as though you can just press a button and just kill whoever you want, and there's going to be no consequences. Go out, be a soldier, go and fight, and then speak to me again in a year's time and tell me just how you like going out there and actually being involved in a war. So many of these little armchair gremlins just really pissing me off. I've seen the rhetoric,
and I hope it is just like the fiery, saber rattling that you come to expect from places like North Korea. Because it is just like random accounts on Twitter, but it's also like Indian media personalities, like you said, people with profiles and things like that.
I think this might be the worst it will get because both sides can kind of claim some sort of victory, because Pakistan claimed it brought down one Indian jet, and India claimed that it had destroyed some terrorist camps. Now they can easily now go back to their people and say, "Oh look, you know what? We've retaliated. We're not going to hear any more trouble." I'm hoping that this kind of bit of chest thumping is the worst it will get. The last thing we need is another war, and then it's not as if that war will stay over there. How many? We have a large South Asian population in this country. Look what happened. Last month after that attack in Kashmir, you had all these people outside the Pakistani embassy who looked like they were about to kick off. Now, can you imagine if things get even worse? We already see the effects of what's happening in Israel and Gaza on the streets today. You really think it's going to be any different with India or Pakistan? Absolutely no chance.
You see, this is a good point you raise here, because obviously, Middle Eastern conflict just appears to be the norm. It's always been a thing since the years I've been on this planet, and it's a very unstable region. I think that's fair. But obviously with the large, the South Asian diaspora in the UK now, it has come up a few times, hasn't it? Things have flared up. I mean, there was the Leicester unrest a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
wasn't it? I think that was largely
2022.
Largely instigated by cricket rivalry between Hindus and Muslims as well, and
we take cricket very seriously.
That was that spilled over into a bit of anti-Hindu sentiment and anti-Muslim sentiment on either side there.
Well, the issue you have is, I think. So I was speaking about this with my landlady, because she was born and brought up here, Hindu family, and she grew up with Muslim Pakistanis in Bradford. And she said, back then we were more united because obviously we were fighting off white racists, so we had a common sort of, exactly. And she said we learned how to coexist and get along with each other. And she goes, the what you're having now, the problem that you're having now is the new arrival of Indians, because they're from a Hindu majority country and they've grown up under Modi's rhetoric. They're not used to that sort of peaceful coexistence, and they don't realize when they come to this country they can't really bully Muslims here because they're greater in number. So you can't get away with beating up the Pakistani lads here, because I'm telling you, those guys know how to have a fight, not going to take it. And I think they don't realize that, it's not like they're a tiny minority that can, boss around like they do in India, or how they lynch people for supposedly slaughtering a cow, which cows are sacrosanct in Hinduism and they're sacred creatures, whereas here it's like anything goes. And I think that's the problem. And you're under Labour's New Deal with India, you're probably going to get more Indian workers coming into this country. And can you just imagine how the politics is going to play out here? It's going to be, very interesting, to say the least.
Have we got time then, just to wrap up, to do our obligatory movie and TV review? I mean, I noticed, there were some audience questions I noticed that actually somebody did ask us about this, and I think the TV shows and movies they wanted us to talk about are things that I just haven't seen. So,
thank God, you can't take the piss out of me for this, because you haven't seen them either.
Well, Gav Patel's asked film TV review suggestions. Thunderbolts, which is the new Marvel, that's on my list. Sinners, that's the new vampire movie. Michael B. Jordan, he's always good. That looks really good. It's had a lot of good responses to it. I haven't seen it. Andor season 2. Absolutely fucking love the first season of that. They somehow managed to make a political drama, one of the best political dramas out of Star Wars, which was amazing, but I haven't got around to the second season yet. And the studio, which these are all things that speak to me, I just haven't had time. That's the Seth Rogen comedy about the Hollywood studio system, where I think he's kind of like a bright-eyed film fan who wants to make good movies. He becomes a movie producer and he slowly gets weighted down by the evils of corporate pressure and things like that. I know a lot about things I've not even seen. Isn't that weird?
That is weird, and unlike you, I've not seen any of those. I have actually been binging on The Recruit on Netflix. It's 2 seasons, and it's about a new recruit to the CIA. He's a lawyer, gets caught up in international politics. There's a former asset to the CIA who threatens to expose what she's done for the agency unless they, help clear her name. And it's kind of a bit of a dark comedy, really. It's so funny, so well made. I think you would like it, actually, and I'm currently on season 2. It's just so funny because he's a lawyer. He's just like fresh in the CIA, and just the dumb shit that he does. It makes for very fun viewing. So yes, I'd
All
recommend
right. Well,
it.
I did see some of the latest season of Black Mirror. I went straight to the USS Callister episode, which is a sequel to one from last season. Absolutely amazing. Just fantastic. And I did see a movie out the cinema at the end of April called Flow. It's the animated film that's just won, I think it won an Oscar. It's essentially a Latvian animated movie about a cat. The interesting thing about it is it was created on free and open source animation software. It's called Blender. And it's, you know, it's kind of like a story with a kind of, I think it's got like maybe a climate change subtext to it. Nothing on the nose, really. It's there if you want it. A wonderfully beautiful, ambient and moving soundtrack. It's a story of a cat, basically, that gets caught up in a flood and has to survive long enough with other animals. And there's no dialogue in it. There's no humans in it. It's a very visual storytelling experience. And I left feeling glad that I went and paid money to see it at the cinema. So I can recommend it if anyone gets a chance. It's not necessarily, I mean, it is rated, probably U for everyone. I don't know what that translates to in America, but it is kiddie friendly. In terms of whether kids will dig it or not, I'm not sure. But if you like to see a cat in peril for nearly 2 hours, that's the film for you.
Well, I have not seen that yet, but I did watch a Bollywood movie called Jewel Thief.
Oh, hang a second. Let me get my guitar. Since you mentioned Bollywood.
I've got my sari on so I can dance on the top of the mountain.
There you go.
Oh my god, that was actually quite good. Wow, I'm actually impressed.
Yeah, it's the one man Bollywood legend now.
It's the one Indian song that every white person knows, basically. I mean, it's a tune, but still, you know, there are like millions of others, just so you know. But
diversify is the message.
Exactly, you need to diversify. But yeah, I just watched that. It was an okay watch. It wasn't award-winning stuff. There was me. I've been meaning to watch a Yellowstone because everyone has enjoyed it. Everyone I know has enjoyed it.
I watched the first season.
Didn't like it.
I liked it. It just felt like Dallas with a bigger production value. I bet you're too young to remember Dallas. Yeah, well, that's another reference lost on you, isn't it?
I know what Dallas is. Hello, JR was shocked in that.
I rescind my snark 100% and apologise unreservedly.
My mum used to watch reruns of Dallas and fucking Dynasty as well. You know, I'm sure if I watched them now, I would really appreciate them. But you know, when you're like 7 years old, you're like, what the hell is this shit?
But do you remember when you were a kid, when you'd be trying to watch something and one of your parents would turn on the fucking news, and you'd think to yourself, if I ever end up one of those boring ball bags who voluntarily watches something as dull as the news, feel free to drown me. And then that's the world I live in now. It's the first thing I do with my coffee.
You know what's funny? I was actually having this thought yesterday when I was reminiscing about my granddad, because you know he would only watch one thing on TV, and that would be the news. And then he'd also read the newspaper, and he'd read the Urdu newspaper called Jang, which means war. It's a Pakistani newspaper.
It means war. And that's the newspaper. Oh my god. Jesus fuck, I'm gonna open a window. Oh. I mean, it's not holding its cards close to its chest there, is it? And it means war.
Well, it means battle, really.
Oh,
yeah. God.
Is this a mainstream newspaper?
It really is. I'm just wondering if there's like a different meaning to the word, because I'm thinking, why does it mean...
It's like me picking up a copy of the Daily Knuckle Butty. Fucking hell.
Anyway, can I finish my point?
Sorry, go on.
Right. And have you know, it's a leading newspaper. Yeah, which, okay, fine, it means war or battle, but that's not the point. Yeah, it's one of Pakistan's newspapers of record. Okay.
Of course it is.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think war is its position. It's not like this. We need war. But anyway, it's supposed to be a respectable newspaper, right? Anyway, so that's what he would do. He would read that newspaper, and he'd also watch the news. And the reason why I was reminiscing was because I was just thinking of something that I was planning to write about my granddad and my memories of him. And as a child, I used to think, oh my God, he's got the news on again. He's so boring. Oh my God, he's killing us here.
Then he'd roll up his copy of War and just twat you over the head with it.
He'd never twatted anyone. I'll give him that. He was actually the most mellow man ever. Yeah, seriously, just would. I mean, he actually did serve in the army, which I'd like to know more about. But yeah, very, very mellow man. But yeah, I just remember thinking as a child, oh my God, why would anybody watch the news 24/7? And lo and behold, I've kind of turned into a mini version of my granddad, just constantly reading the news, watching the news. I mean, constantly in despair. Maybe this is why I'm just so depressed all the fucking time. And when I go to Japan, I need to just switch off and not check anything that's happening in the news, unless it affects Japan. So if there's going to be an earthquake or something, that then I want to know about it.
Or a Godzilla attack or something.
Or a Godzilla attack, but otherwise, I think yeah, maybe I need to just detox.
You'll have to pick up a copy of their leading newspaper when I think it's called Slice and Dice. Just local Japanese news. Yeah.